Israel has intensified its attacks on Gaza, killing people early this morning at the outset of a raid on the Al-Shifa hospital. The hospital is where thousands of Palestinian civilians have been trapped during weeks of fighting. Al-Shifa is the biggest hospital in the Gaza Strip. Israel says it launched the raid because Hamas has a command center underneath Al-Shifa and uses connected tunnels to conceal military operations and to hold hostages. Hamas has denied this claim. Global calls for humanitarian ceasefire have mounted in recent days as Al-Shifa became the focus of Israel's attacks. Fears are growing for the thousands of people trapped there on the front line of the conflict. Let's get more on this with SABC News correspondent Mia Lamberti, who's standing by for us in Beirut. Mia, very good afternoon to you. What do we know about the latest in the situation?
I mean, we're hearing very different accounts of what is happening in the Al-Shifa hospital, again, the biggest one in Gaza, and one of the last ones operating there. According to the Israeli Defense Forces, they are carrying out, quote, a precise and targeted operation in a specific area of the Al-Shifa hospital. Israeli forces have also said that during this operation that they have found weapons and other evidence of the presence of Hamas, although they have not presented evidence of that. For now, they are just saying that they have found this, but we have not seen any footage or evidence of this. Now, this is a very different account that we are hearing from the Palestinians, with doctors saying that that Israeli soldiers have shot deliberately at the people inside, including patients and medical personnel as well, with doctors and workers from there, not only from the Palestinian Ministry of Health, but also from international organizations such as the Doctors Without Borders, saying that there were no armed men in the hospital, that there were no presence of Hamas fighters in the hospital, that many people tried to evacuate the hospital, but they were shot at by Israeli snipers, although Israel had asked civilians to evacuate the hospital. The situation inside of the hospital is really dire at this point. The last time I spoke with a spokesperson of the Ministry of Health in Gaza, he described the situation of those dozens of premature babies who were removed from incubators from the lack of oxygen. They just published a video inside of the Al-Shifa hospital as Israel is carrying out this operation, which is still ongoing, and doctors are trying to work in an environment completely filled with dust, which is of course affecting the patients there. So, and again, as this is happening, there are so many warnings from the United Nations, from other aid organizations, saying that, you know, an attack on a medical center is a violation of international law, it constitutes a war crime, and so a very concerning situation there in Gaza that is still developing as we speak.
Those calls for a ceasefire increasing, Antonio Guterres saying the situation there is horrible. As you said, people saying there's a war crime taking place, there's a genocide taking place there, but these attacks continue.
I'm not sure if I understood your question, but I believe that the calls for a ceasefire will continue as long as the situation continues in Gaza. Israel has announced today that it would make a humanitarian pause for a couple of hours in northern Gaza to allow for the rest of these operations. We're seeing, according to pictures posted by the Israeli Defense Forces, that they are sending aid into these hospitals. So there is some kind of a humanitarian pause, but this is not what these organizations are calling for. Of course, this is welcomed not only by the international community, but for Gazans who can, you know, take a deep breath and you know, call their loved ones and try to get some water and food and safety, or try to go to the hospital or leave the hospital if necessary. But what the United Nations, for example, is asking for in many countries, not only here in the Arab region but across the world, are putting pressure on Israel at the moment, is for a complete ceasefire, to stop its operation in Gaza, which is an occupied territory, to remove its troops from Gaza, to stop the airstrikes from Gaza, and at the same time calls for Hamas to release the hostages as well, with Israel saying that it will not stop this incursion in Gaza until it eliminates Hamas. And so these organizations are saying that this might not be actually possible to physically remove Hamas from Gaza, because it's more than just a terrorist group considered by many countries. It is a political group, and also Palestinians do not want to leave the Gaza Strip. This is their home. So there is this very firm positions from both sides, which are not allowing for any room for maneuver for the ceasefire. But of course, as we continue to see not only attacks in Gaza, but specifically attacks on schools, on hospitals, on ambulances, on journalists, on civilians, on children, on refugee camps, which all constitute war crimes and are violations of international law. We are expected to continue to see, not only to continue to see these calls for ceasefire, but to actually see an increase in pressure, to see an increase in protests around the world, as we have seen in the past few weeks, as long as there is not a ceasefire called for there.